I don't think we'll ever have a show like this ever again. But the next generation is on its way, and all we can do is hope the next series is just as awesome as this one.
We got a mediocre road trip movie that does very little to live up to the legacy of its predecessor.
I'm half expecting the first episode to be about getting vaccinated.
Literally none of the characters have any sort of arc.
This is by far the worst thing I've ever had to review on this channel so far.
Focusing so hard on getting the characters into their new series starting positions that it pays no attention to being a good story.
It's also bad. It's a bland, tedious, flat, uninspired slog masquerading as a faithful continuation of its predecessor in spite of everything pointing to the contrary.
Shallow, boring, and uninspired.
I have a question to ask you guys.
Have you ever become obsessed with a piece of media, grown up and become part of a fandom completely devoted to that piece of media, see that piece of media end, watch the sequel to that piece of media, love it just as much as the original, but find that no one else in the fandom appears to share your views in any way, and as a matter of fact, actually despises that sequel? So much, in fact, that it's actively tearing apart the fandom you want to tell dear to pieces, and as a result, you feel compelled to make multiple video essays defending it, all while knowing that you're going to get a ton of hate in the process. Well, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got in this situation, and we'll get to that, trust me. But first, I want to open up this video with a simple proposition. What if I told you that LMPG5 was actually good? Hey everypony, my name is Hawk Nightwing, the most unapologetic defender of G5 you'll ever meet. Now, after such a nuclear statement like that, you are obviously angry at me. You are probably writing angry comments, dislike bombing the video, telling me how horrible of a pony I am and how I will never be a true fan, but hear me out. Over the course of 9 whole months, I have collected evidence upon evidence to the contrary, and I'm here to share all that with y'all. I know this is a controversial belief, but I think you'll be genuinely interested to hear what I have to say. You don't have to agree, it would be a nice bonus if you did. But I hope you at least understand my passion for G5. If you've all seen my fanfiction page, it's chock full of G5 stories. And there's a reason for that. Not only did it skyrocket my name and made me confident I can pursue writing one day as either a job or a hobby, I made these stories because I believe in G5. In my humble opinion, G5 doesn't deserve the relentless bashing it's received. I really don't understand the hate, and while I probably never will, gathering up all this evidence has certainly been a learning experience for me, as to how some of my fellow bronies think. Today, I want to challenge those preconceived notions about G5, and really dig into why this incarnation is so hated, while the previous incarnation was so loved. Why is it that Twilight, Sparkle, and the main 6 are so beloved, while Sunny, Starscale, and the main 5 are so despised? What is it about them that tunes people off? What is it about Make Your Mark Entire Tale that causes people to react so vitriolically? Why is G5 even hated at all, when it doesn't really deserve that hate quality-wise? You all know the age-old complaints about this iteration. You've heard it many times over. It's a failed sequel, it loses the heart and soul of FIM, it's generic, the world building sucks, the potential of the movie is lost, nothing makes any sense, the plot is bland and uninspired, the characters are flanderized, the villain sucks, etc. You've heard it all. But is that really the truth? Does G5 really suffer from all those things? And do the supposed complaints make it awful? I'd argue no. And this is what I am attempting to prove. I want to prove that G5 is amazing and worth investing your time in. Not only do I want to give a voice to people like me out there in this fandom who also love it, I'm also aiming to convince you. If you are someone who doesn't like Gen 5, I want to try and make you question whether or not what you currently believe is really the way Gen 5 is meant to be seen. I want to approach this topic as an inspiring author and take you along for the ride. And then, once we've dug to the center, we're going to unravel those criticisms and debunk all of them. And before we begin, I want to state that despite everything I'm going to say, I do not think that G5 is a masterpiece. I am not trying to parade G5 on a heavenly pedestal like you guys do with FIM and say it's untouchable because as I just established, it isn't. But with that being said, G5 is still really great, and I want to prove that in this video, because as you all have seen from the intro, there is a lot of hate towards this generation, and a lot of it is unwarranted and unnecessary. And personally, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing so much hate towards the show just because it's not what we know and love. I'm tired of seeing so much negativity across this fandom spread about this generation. Its story, its characters, its world, its villain, the whole shebang. I'm tired of seeing something I love being tarnished by its audience. I'm tired of people refusing to give it a chance, making up lies in order to justify why they think it's terrible, creators making video after video trashing it just to chase easy views and likes, Brony's being divided because all of a sudden it's bad to love a piece of pony media. I'm sick of it, and I want it to stop. I no longer want to see such animosity towards a show about talking cartoon ponies, parading around a fandom that was built upon the foundations of love, friendship, acceptance, and positivity. I no longer want to see hate being the prevailing force in this wonderful community. I no longer want to have to go around and explain why I love G5. I shouldn't have to. I never ask any of you why you love G4. Yes, it's quite obvious, we all love it, but even if it wasn't, we shouldn't be divided by fear and distrust because of this, the exact thing that G5 is warning us about. We should come together and embrace the redeeming qualities of G5 like we did so long ago, even for the worst episodes of Friendship is Magic. The purpose of this video is to spread what I firmly believe to be the objective truth only. I want to hopefully convince a lot of you of G5's quality, what I, and many others like me see in it, why I would think it's worth watching, why I would think it's worth investing your time and attention the same way you guys did for FIM, and most importantly of all, why you should love it too. Like Sunny Starscout in the movie, I want to make a difference, and I'm hoping you'll stick around to hear what I have to say. As I said before, you don't have to completely agree, but if you do end up agreeing with at least 67% of my points in the video, then that is a huge win, and I couldn't ask for anything more than that. This is a topic that is very personal to me, and I think you'll see why. My Little Pony has always had a major impact on my life, and I wouldn't know where I'd be without it. If after this video you guys can see why Generation 5 is good, why it's not worth hating on, then that would mean the world to me. It's not G4 and probably never will be, but that's okay. We shouldn't hate on this generation just because it's attempting to be the sequel to the previous one. There is a lot to love here, and if you are willing to stay and listen, then boy, do I have quite the case file for you. In order to understand G5 and defend it, we have to go in deep. Very deep. See, it's not so easy to understand the backlash by just talking about Make Your Mark and why it's great. No, the fan backlash to G5 has existed since the day a new generation graced our Netflix screen with its presence, and the world was simply not ready for it. No, in order to completely understand the backlash to G5 and break it down piece by piece and counter them all with the cold hard truth, we need to go back to the start of it all and defend the whole thing. I'm going to be defending the entirety of Generation 5 of My Little Pony in this video. That's right. A New Generation, Tell Your Tale, A Maritime Bay Adventure, all chapters of Make Your Mark, including Winter Wish Day, the comics, all of it. And our adventure all starts with the movie that kickstarted it all. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a passionate defense of My Little Pony Generation 5.
Now, it may seem a bit pointless to defend a new generation in this video, and at a first glance, you'd be totally in the right for thinking that way. After all, the movie sports an impressive 92% fresh critic score, and also an impressive 84% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Plus, this movie in general seems to have the Brony fandom on board, so why do I need to defend it, you so curiously ask? Well, there are several reasons why, and the most important of all being, there was hate for the movie before it came out. Yes, you heard that right. Let's travel back in time, all the way back to when a new generation was in its early stages. Leaked pictures were coming out here and there. The fandom was pretty excited for what the next iteration of this ongoing franchise was going to bring. Back then, our only glimpse of what G5 was going to look like was through leaked pillow merchandise. Yeah, I remember when that was a thing. Even when the synopsis came out, there was a general sense of hype for the movie. Sure, not as much as it could have been as before the leak, we all assumed that we were getting a redesigned race swap main 6. But nope, new cast, new characters, fully CGI. It was an exciting time. Until something came out that jump-started the whole G5 hate train. I like to say that the ball got rolling with this clip right here. I'm gonna let you take a listen.
You know, I can already tell you now, if it's going to go the way, if they're leading with activism, they can take the show and shove it up their ass. But then they're going to blame on the istophobes and everybody else, because if you don't like their idea, if they ruin everything about it and they make it unfun, and they don't make, they put message over story, and they make it shitty and preachy and people hate it, it's not going to be because they misstepped. It's going to be because everybody is a racist, istophobe, whatever, so they can label you and not take any responsibility for the fact that they fucked it up.
Yes, that was real. No, I can't believe the video exists either. Brace yourselves, we're in for a long one as I got a lot to talk about. Warning, if you're sub to any of these people, you will get offended by what I'm about to say. Here's a timestamp so you can skip this section. This totally inconspicuous clip comes from a YouTube channel known as Clownfish TV, and this video really started to make hate for G5 trend. Now I know what you're thinking. Hawk, this happens all the time. Leaks come out, people react, it's the internet. I totally get that. But no. What I'm trying to say is that Clownfish TV and other grifters were trying to farm outrage for this movie before it came out, simply due to its synopsis and villain. These people didn't know anything about the movie aside from the fact that Sunny's an activist. Regardless about how you feel about activist leads in media, it was too early to make an educated guess on what the movie's going to be quality-wise. Sunny could have been the obsessive type of activist, or she could have been as chill as Twilight when spreading friendship. We knew nothing about her. Zilch. And that's not even counting the second video they put out, which they fanned the flames further and continued to try and frame a new generation in a political context.
Fascist imagery in My Little Pony, even though these are the bad guys, even though this pony is literally orange with Trump hair, I'm not kidding you. He's an orange pony with Trump hair.
Or the whole cancel G5 movement that our old friend Mixmaster tried to start on Change.org. I'm sure you've seen these type of grifters before. They're everywhere. You've seen the Star Wars fandom, Marvel fandom, all types of fandoms. If this is 2016 onwards, you're guaranteed to find one of these people so desperate for views and attention that they'll make up anything to push a narrative, then walk back their statements after their own narrative isn't the popular opinion anymore. This is where G5 hate all started, and it's something modern G5 haters try to bury nowadays, so they weren't gunning for this generation's downfall from day one. From the very beginning, people were rooting against this movie, and for no apparent reason other than Sunny's an activist. Yeah, how terrible is it that a new My Little Pony has a main character that advocates for friendship and unity, the core themes of the brand? So, wasn't woke propaganda in FIM when Twilight and the main six literally preached friendship and getting along to our faces in every single episode throughout the show's runtime and taught friendship to foreign nations, but now it is woke propaganda because there's a new status quo and Sunny's a sole believer in friendship? It wasn't woke propaganda when Whole School of Friendship plotline was introduced in Season 8, and Chancellor Naysay was your stereotypical white man being ultra-racist cringe against the young six, but now it is woke propaganda because Hasbro saying Orange Man bad, I guess. You didn't think it was anti-fascism then, but suddenly you do now. It wasn't woke propaganda when all the young six-focused episodes hammered home how great they are as friends coming from different cultural backgrounds. It wasn't the corporate higher-ups trying to force diversity down our throats then, but it is now. Suddenly the movie's all about fighting fascism and racism, and the plot is pretty much the road trip fetch quest archetype that nobody complained about before now. And you were preaching this mindset from before the movie came out. This shows, if anything, the absolute refusal to call out anything that could be classified as woke then, because it is FIM, and FIM is the untouchable holy grail, I guess. But the moment a new generation comes along, oh boy. Get ready to feel the thunder, Hasbro, because the fandom is striking back against you and your indoctrination. This also applies to the whole synopsis in general. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you guys here. I was not a fan of this plot leak at all. We had just seemingly come off of FIM's absolutely beautiful ending, and suddenly all of that was gone. Everything Twilight and her friends worked towards was for nothing. I was not amused about this in the slightest, and I didn't think Hasbro would ever think to do this. It actually put me off for a while. But eventually I did give the movie a chance, or this video wouldn't exist. And I was pleasantly surprised. But I have no problem with people having strong reactions to synopsis that basically says, you know everything Twilight did to establish friendship? Well, all that is gone now. This is a new generation, and ponies have to be brought back together by a new set of friends. You can understand get people angry, and that's fine. We had a beautiful journey spanning 9 full seasons, only to have the perfect ending to that journey ripped away from us past the grandparent when he was trying to separate Pear Butter from Bright Mac and the perfect pair. Being angry about that is fine. What's not so fine is trying to weave a hate narrative that this new generation is automatically going to be bad simply because of that fact. We knew literally nothing about the movie, and these clowns tried to spin it as if Hasbro's getting to the far left by being woke, when let's be honest here. Does that word even mean anything anymore? Hasbro literally just saw how popular G4 was with audiences and decided to capitalize on without thinking of the consequences of doing so. Oh, you like this show? We'll have more of this show then. Buy our toys! That's literally all Hasbro did. They weren't being malicious, not trying to alienate their audience. They just saw a successful generation and decided to continue the world of that generation to boost their toy sales. That's not being woke. That's called capitalism. More toy sales, more money. Brand nostalgia, more money. That's all it was. I mean, it's the only reason why we got 9 seasons of FIM, let's not kid ourselves here. This was definitely more of an executive decision than a creative one, as I can't imagine the FIM writers ever agreeing to this, let alone the cast. Heck, Tara Strong even said she wasn't returning as Twilight, which we now know not to be the case, so it honestly gets me intrigued as to what changed her mind. We're going to come back to the whole G5 sequel thing later on in this section, so please make note of this for later. But I'm sorry, why is the term activist suddenly being used in a negative light nowadays? Sunny being an activist doesn't mean squat.
Not even a million squat.
An activist can apply to anything, both on the left and right side of politics. Are you lobbying to see change brought to your hometown, state, or country on any level? Do you want action taken on a cause you care about? Hate to say it, but if that criteria checks out, then you're an activist. People tend to think that nowadays when a character in media is an activist, they're automatically the 1% crazy lunatics that just want to see the world burn when that's not the case at all. Sunny's an activist, Twilight's an activist, hate to break it to you. By trying to spread her ideology to other ponies and creatures the way she did, Twilight was effectively and by definition an activist. So all you people who believe in this sort of activism bad narrative better start going home and throwing away your Twilight Sparkle figurines if this thing means so much to you. I'll get into this more once we start talking about the movie itself, but the narrative you see trying to be spread here doesn't hold up under the slightest bit of scrutiny. You may be questioning how all this backstory is relevant, and yeah, you'd be completely right to ask that. I did go on about this for quite a while, and I will throw up a timestamp in this post if you want to skip my whole rant. But trust me when I say this is important to understanding the mindset of the average G5 hater. These bronies had already convinced themselves that no matter what G5 gave them on a story, character, or even entertainment level, it would always be bad because it's attempting to be a sequel to FIM.
The main takeaway you'll also be getting from this is that 95% of hate for this generation is based on false narratives. How, you may ask? Well, it mainly comes down to the analyst community misrepresenting elements in either a new generation or Make and Mark, claiming that certain elements reflect bad writing when that isn't the case at all. It would be fine if that was actually true, but in a lot of instances, it's not. Certain other false narratives, like Sunny's journey in the movie making her a Mary Sue who's always right about everything, the main 5 being virtually carbon copies of the main 6, the episodes having bad character writing and bad story executions, saying the Hitch was ruined, the movies pushing partisan politics, etc. There are obviously more, but I want to save those for the Make and Mark section. Those arguments don't have any bearing on reality. This isn't just me saying it for the heck of it. G5 itself is saying that. What I'm saying comes directly from this generation itself objectively. If you looked at these mediums with even the slightest bit of analytical lens, like this fandom is supposed to be doing, you realize that there's a lot to pick and discuss. Certain details and pieces of dialogue can define entire character arcs. A single minute detail can have bearing on the rest of the plot. One character could be poised to have a fantastic redemption arc. The main villain has a lot more going for her than you'd initially expect. To top it all off, a lot of the reviews for G5 are incredibly surface level and don't engage in the amount of analysis we've come to expect from this community, as I stated above. And while you may feel inclined to write it off and say this is just the fandom now, that actually isn't the case. And after what I've showed you, it's perfectly reasonable to come to the conclusion that a certain subsection of bronies did not want G5 to succeed from the very beginning. It's obvious by watching Clownfish TV's videos that they are, or at least one of them, is a brony, and they're perfectly content with making up a political narrative just to provoke the masses. Imagine being so desperate for hate clicks that you feel the need to pick on a piece of media before it even comes out. That is disgusting and the worst kind of commentary. It's in the same vein as the absolute chasm of toxicity that's the Star Wars fandom at the moment. I would expect this kind of behavior from that community, but not this one. Not the brony fandom. Not the fandom built on positivity, love, and friendship. Not the community that brought so many creative people together and united them in a common passion. The same fandom that helped people out, supported personal causes, created amazing fan content, had fun with MLP, etc. We're smarter than this. How anyone fell for that lazy grifting back then is just a miracle to me. These false narratives existed from the very beginning, and we very nearly witnessed the collapse of this community before a new generation even had time to find its audience. We very nearly saw G5 fall into the clutches of these imbeciles. Imagine for a moment that the fandom actually fell to these people, and they review bomb a new generation to death because they don't have lives outside of spelling out political buzzwords and blatant fear-mongering. It's not just the fact that these early grifting videos existed. It's the fact that we even had the capacity to curse G5 in the vein that we did. We actually did this. These videos on Clownfish TV are a permanent stand in this community because we let them preach this. We let them influence us for a brief time and nearly destroyed this community. The outrage was not existent during FIM's time, but now that it's 2021, it's free real estate to call MLP woke. I know it sounds like I'm grasping at straws here, but trust me, I'm not. There are valid critiques to be had, sure, and when those pop up, I will acknowledge those. But the majority of G5 hate you see isn't credible because of where it originated, and how they refuse to call out FIM when it does the exact same thing. And we will get to that. Trust me, we will get to that. Now, I don't want to lump every single brony into that category. Despite what I have said, not every single My Little Pony fan wanted G5 to be dead in the water, and they wanted to give it a fair shot. Those people would later go on to become the subsection of true fans that I currently belong in. However, those fans, I'm very sad to report, appear to be very few and far between, even today. When you see so much animosity towards a generation this early, it really throws a wrench in the credibility of the fandom at large, knowing that if G5 wasn't riddled with woke propaganda, which it isn't, they would have found something else to hate about it, and guess what? They did! What a perfect coincidence!
Heck, I'm half expecting the first episode to be about getting vaccinated.
The actual negative reviews made after the movie came out weren't much better. Sure, they're not as numerous because, as I said, the movie was very well received, but when a video hating on the movie is made, it really sticks out like a sore thumb. Now let's be real here. Negative reviews happen all the time for any movie, and you're allowed to believe what you want. It's freedom of speech after all, and that is definitely something the internet needs to learn. But the negative reviews that I'm about to choose from are just... Man, where do I begin? The political fear-mongering undertones were gone, for the most part, but they were replaced by blatant hypocrisy and nostalgia. When nostalgia enters the equation, you can never have a fair discussion, and these reviews have that in spades. I could point to a couple notable ones from YouTubers Firebrand and Zayd Magenta, formerly known as Misanthropony. I'm sure there are more out there, but I'm selecting these reviews in particular because they are great illustrations of my point of how there's been a fundamental misunderstanding of G5 as a whole, starting with this movie. Plus, these creators do have a notable influence over the brony fandom, so I found it important to attack the roots of the modern G5 hate, as well as the early hate. What I want to prove with both parts 1 and 2 of this video was that there was a coordinated attempt to destroy G5 from the very beginning by spreading blatant falsehoods and saying the movie preaches politics to kids. This two-parter will in turn set the stage for the rest of the series, where it will utterly run G5 hate into the ground. These videos will kind of be like the snack before you have large Thanksgiving dinner, and that was a very bad analogy, I am so sorry. but you guys kind of get the point. Because I want to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that 95% of all hate for this generation is not credible in the slightest, it only makes sense for me to start at the beginning and work my way down for each installment. And in regards to Josh Scorcher's review, the version you'll be seeing will be a heavily trimmed down version. The reason for this is that, well, I wanted to trim the fat and cut right to the heart of his talking points and debunk them. Anything I cut out of this video are things that I either agree with, or parts I just find redundant, as I do end up debunking some of his later points in my earlier commentary sections. He does tend to ramble on quite a bit in certain areas, and I don't think we need to see all that. So as much as I adore his absolutely hilarious intro, you will not see me react to that, as that's just extra fluff we don't need. Sorry. And before we get into this, I want to make it abundantly clear that I do not think A New Generation is a 100% perfect film. The two things I would do differently is make the runtime longer, and give Pip more character development than she ended up getting in the final product. Plus, I wouldn't have Izzy rap during Fit Right In because that part was oh my Luna, I wanna die levels of cringe, and what is otherwise a near masterpiece of an LP story. Those are basically all the critiques I have with the film right out of the gate. I want to make that clear so you guys know that my intention is to be fair, while also stating my various controversial opinions. So sit back, relax, and I rip to shreds what is possibly the worst view on A New Generation I have ever seen. Roll it.
So, Friendship is Magic ends and a new generation begins. Generation 4 of My Little Pony to Generation 5. Let me get this out of the way. A New Generation is not the worst movie I've seen. Not even close. Seriously, there's plenty of good things about it. But, honestly, it's not nearly as enjoyable compared to Friendship is Magic's opener.
Alright, this disclaimer does seem fairly innocuous at first, I will admit, and you'd be right for thinking that. Until you realize too late that he then proceeds to unfairly compare it to, with every single point being in G4's favor, even when it doesn't deserve it. It's fine to think that the FIM pilot was better, I mean that's subjective, but it's a whole other thing to basically use that to make A New Generation the punching bag in this review. Yeah, I got nothing else to say, moving on.
Now, I know people might say that I shouldn't be comparing it to Friendship is Magic, and I agree with that on principle. This should be its own thing, and it should stand on its own merits. That being said, it's hard not to compare the two when A, it's canonically set in the same universe, B, the main character is a fangirl of the main six and their adventures, and C, the show freaking opens with them! If they wanted me to treat them as separate entities, I feel like they kind of shot themselves in the foot here.
Okay, so the social paradigm shift, if we're using the words of James Cameron, that needs to happen in this fandom is that people need to stop thinking like this. The G5 can't be judged as its own thing because it's a sequel to G4. Yes, it absolutely can. I mean, if you were dealing with a G5 that takes place only a month or a year or so after the end of FIM, when everything is still just peachy, then I would understand why you think that way. I think we need to stop with the notion that a sequel can't function as its own story due to being tied to a greater continuity, because stories are rarely ever that simple. While you have continuity and plot elements carried over from the original story, the sequel story, if it is done correctly, can absolutely be judged as its own thing, because that sequel story is in fact an original story that uses the foundations of the previous work set up to expand and build upon its themes. In New Generation's case, the way the writers write the status quo actually works because it doesn't have to account for what happened in G4 right away. It can build up the mystery, and not to mention, this isn't even set in the same locales as G4. Wherever Maritime Bay, Zephyr Heights, and Bridlewood are on the map, they are in completely different locations from G4 locales like Ponyville and Canterlot. Count that with the fact that we have a completely new cast of characters with completely different backstories and journeys, and the fact that this takes place so far removed from the previous timeline, and voila! You got yourself an original story that absolutely can be judged as its own thing. So no, Josh, G5 is its own thing and should be judged as such.
So yeah, be prepared, because I'm going to be frequently comparing this movie to the first two episodes of Friendship is Magic. If you think that's unfair, well,
I don't care.
Well, under normal circumstances, I absolutely love a person who's based, but in this case, you were being unfair, man. And I think you should take that into account, all things considered. We'll get into why very soon, so as I always say, make note of this for later.
And because of that, the action wasn't very good. Mostly because it feels like nothing significant happens, and nothing the characters do matters.
So let me get this straight here. You're saying that nothing the main five do matters in the final act, and that nothing significant happens. I hate to break it to you, but I gotta disagree there. I'd actually argue that everyone had a big role to play during the action. Zip and Hitch were in charge of stopping Prodicus Maximus, while Pip, Izzy, and Sunny tried to put all the crystals back together. Heck, even side characters like Queen Haven and Elf Biddle had stuff going on. I think Josh's argument mainly boils down to the fact that despite everything, the lighthouse still got destroyed, and to that I say, it was important that it did. We'll get to that in a bit, but even in spite of the set outcome, the main five still had massively important roles to play during the climax, and their actions were significant. Without Sunny trying to put the crystals back together with her friends, she would have never realized that it was the ponies coming together that really mattered in the end, in order for the crystals to work and not the other way around. It took that near-death experience for that realization to set in. Zip and Hitch's active roles in pulling off the wheels also served their characters very well, and shows how they're willing to put themselves on the line in order to stop Sprout's machine. The whole point of that scene was to stop Sprout from constantly throwing the green goop everywhere and putting the other ponies in danger. Yes, It ultimately didn't stop the destruction, but it did succeed in limiting that option for Sprout, and he was forced to rely on a full-on charge. And this is significant because while brief, it does buy Sunny enough time to crawl to the crystals and put the unicorn crystal in its rightful slot. Had the assault kept going, it's likely that some would have gotten on the inside, messed things up very badly for our effort here. If you look what these green goop things do, they seem to glue ponies to the ground in order to stop them. So if one of them got inside, you can imagine that our characters actually would have died upon the top of the lighthouse collapsing, due to them being unable to escape the collapsing rubble. Thanks to Hitch pulling off the wheel, Sprout could no longer directly assault the lighthouse, which is the only reason why Sunny and her group survived the fall. Pip also has a moment where she warns Alfred of the incoming machine heading his way, and that's when Cleanhaven saves him. So even she gets a role to play here, which just proves the notion that she did nothing significant throughout the whole movie. And Phyllis too gets a moment of redemption here, when she plants herself in front of the machine in an attempt to stop a rampaging son. As such, I find the argument that nothing the characters do matters or is significant in any way quite false, and this statement either strikes me as willful ignorance, or he didn't realize why the characters were doing what they were doing. All he described was his very surface-level interpretation of the climax, which just bugged me quite a bit. Here's the kicker. Stories don't work that way, Josh. I'm not trying to be mean here, as there are parts of this review video I do enjoy, but you'll soon notice that Josh Scorcher either tends to miss important details or outright misinterprets others throughout his analysis. And this won't be the last time I get very frustrated at what he's saying. Moving on.
So, in the grim brightness of the far future, magic is gone and the pony tribes are divided once again. Why the Wendigos haven't come back, I don't know, but whatever. Who cares about following the rules set forth by the universe? We need to talk about how racism is bad.
This is a common complaint among haters when it comes to a new generation, that it disrespects the original lore because the Wendigos don't come back. And I'm sorry, we need to do this.
Pop quiz.
Question number 1. What are the Wendigos? If you answered ancient winter spirits that feed on the fighting and distrust of others, then you would be correct. Question number 2. What are the Wendigos made out of? Now, this is a trickier question, only hardcore fans can answer it. If you answered snow,
you're half right.
No, I didn't expect any of you to get this question because there's a deeper answer in there. The Wendigos are also made out of magic. Everything in ancient Equestria is magical, and we typically associate dark spheres with magic. The Wendigos are magical creatures, and because every pony has magic, even the Earth ponies, they are attracted when the tribes start fighting. What happens when all the ponies lose their magical abilities and all magic stops existing? You guessed it! No Wendigos! Even if we wanted to go out on a limb and say that they aren't attracted to ponies' negative energy like the Sirens, as that does delve dangerously into headcanon territory, they are still beings of magic. No magic, no Wendies! This isn't an era with the world building at all, and it outright astounds me that some people thought this was a problem, and still do. I also find it important to mention that the pony tribes aren't fighting. Like, if you want to completely disregard the fact that the Wendigos are beings of magic, the pony tribes are living in separation by this point. While it is implied that Twilight destroyed them for good during the ending of the end, that's never explicitly stated in the episode itself, so we're just going to leave that aspect alone. If we still want to say that the Wendigos not appearing is a problem, it actually isn't. Because the pony tribes haven't interacted with each other for what seemed like several hundred years following their split. So if they haven't been fighting for long periods of time, why would the Wendigos have any reason to appear? The tribes are living in completely separate civilizations, don't interact with one another, and barely even know the others exist outside of myth and legend. That's not a particularly good feeding ground. Hey Wendy, do you want to feed on this pony civilization? They're not fighting, so I think we're just gonna leave them alone. Okay, yeah, sure. What do you think, Bill? Bill? It's actually a good thing that they don't appear in this movie for reasons that mainly boil down to them being used as a plot device to force a resolution in FIM. In fact, here's what my good friend on FimFiction, the Blue EM2, had to say about the nature of FIM's conflicts. And I'd argue that he is absolutely correct in this case. The Wendigos being there does serve to raise the stakes in the scene, yes, but at what point are we willing to sacrifice better storytelling to have those stakes? The way the Fandom of Equestria was portrayed comes off as particularly toxic because the sidekicks were being forced to choose friendship or all stayed freezed at death. And I'm sorry. Why did it have to happen? This is the main advantage that New Generation has over FIM as a whole all by itself. Because by sacrificing the fantasy setting and excluding the presence of the Wendigos altogether, the resolution gets to be intimate and personal, where the ponies choose naturally to give friendship a chance on their own accords. Not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. And we will get to that, trust me. The Wendigos only serve as a convenient plot device to force a friendship resolution, and a New Generation skipping that entirely was a smart move.
Racism is bad. If you think my constant statements that racism is bad is annoyingly ham-fisted, well, that's my biggest problem with the movie. Oh my gosh, it will not shut up that racism is bad! I'm part of the choir, and it's still preaching to me!
Alright, this is where I'm starting to take issue with this review. If you notice, Josh seems to think that the message of this movie is a very political one, and to that extent, he thinks that the message is just racism is bad. And no, that's not the message at all. We'll get to that in a bit, but my biggest problem with this video is how he's about to base his entire narrative on G5's message off of that. And don't even get me started when he goes to legit politics.
In A New Generation, I can't say I'm super interested in this new Equestria because it feels so empty. Especially when nothing super huge happened traveling between each city.
Now, it is true that the world of modern Equestria is small, I will not deny that. If this was a contest of world building between G4 and G5, then FIM would win hands down. However, let us go back to how this all started and remind ourselves how this all began. For the entirety of Season 1 and the majority of Season 2, we only had 3 locations to immerse ourselves in. Well, 4 if you count Cloudsdale, but I've always considered that a part of Ponyville since I was like 7, so... Ponyville, Sweet Apple Acres, and Canterlot. This status quo didn't change until, like, Season 3. Yes, we got occasional new settings like the Everfree Forest and Mountain with the Dragon and Dragonshy, but those aren't really new locations in their own right. The Everfree Forest is so close to Ponyville that it may as well be attached to it. The Dragon Mountain was a one-off location with nothing special behind it. G5 having only Maritime Bay, Bridalwood, and Zephyr Heights isn't really a problem. Heck, throw Make and Bark into the equation and we got Opaling's Dark Castle, too. So 4 locations, just like FIM. Maritime Bay is meant to be our new Ponyville, so it makes sense that the most time will be spent there. And since you're comparing the 2 generations pilots, I'm sorry to say it, but saying nothing particularly special happens in any location is downright false. Bridalwood and Zephyr Heights are given far more screen time than Canterlot, Ponyville, and Sweet Apple Acres combined. In the pilot 2 part, we just breeze by those locations after some wacky shenanigans occur, then the remaining main 6 just show up in the library anyway. It doesn't feel significant. Contrast that with Bridalwood and Zephyr Heights, where everything feels much more involved with the plot in a significant way. Without the latter, Sunny wouldn't be able to get the Pegasus Crystal in the heist, and we wouldn't have Matt, Zip, and Pip. In the former, we have a dance sequence that allows Sunny to win the Unicorn Crystal, and Pip gets to show off her usefulness for about a minute. Cut the scene of meeting Applejack, we wouldn't even know Sweet Apple Acres existed. Everything is just so much more involved, whereas a new generation doesn't succeed in the expansive world, and more than makes up for that by having the 3 locations that does show off and advance the plot in a really big way. Ah, you have to listen to me! Wait, who are you? I'm you, but stronger! That literally doesn't answer anything. Why did you interrupt my analysis? Why do you look like future Twilight from It's About Time? Budget cuts. Oh yeah. I traveled back in time from the future to prevent this video from being immediately dated upon release. Chapters 5 and 6 of Make Your Mark have just come out, so it only makes sense that you let me handle this bit, because we actually have a massive update to Rule of G5. You don't mind, do you? I mean, you're me, so it's whatever, I guess. Take it away. Excellent. So, at the time of recording this, Make Your Mark is not a number to expand on the world building for this generation that really makes Josh's critiques look worse in hindsight. We have the Breezy Night Mark and the Isle of Scaly in Chapter 5, and a whole separate dimension in Starlight Ridge in Chapter 6. And in each place, something extremely important happens that benefits either the overarching story or the characters. See my Chapter 6 review for further details. So no longer can you say that the world this new Equestria is empty in any way. I know this happens way down the line from this film, but this really goes to show how silly this critique of the world building really is. Imagine we just got the whole world of G5 dumped on us in just the first movie, like Joss apparently wanted. Now I know the counter-argument for this will be, but Hawk, I caught you! G5 operates in the same world as G4, so everything should automatically be presented to us because it's already been established previously. No? Like, did you miss a new generation part of a new generation? If you stand by the statement in any way, then clearly you did. These are new characters, and the world has changed drastically since G4. When it was first announced that G5 would be a sequel to G4, the developers really wanted to focus on different ponies and unexplored parts of Equestria, according to the Wikipedia article. So, automatically, there is a new status quo, and the world has to be built back up again from scratch. This actually works to G5's benefit, as when they do introduce new locations, they do it so much better than G4 in most instances, such as the Breezy having an actual trading culture, and the dragons no longer being brutish archetypes. And even in this movie, there's a very clear attempt to have each of the pony civilizations have their own distinct societies and cultures that go far beyond just a basic, this is what Earth ponies do, or this is what Pegasi do. The only exception I think works more in G4's favor is that it's established more that the unicorns are the elite noble class, which I think if that was the intention G5 was going with for the Pegasi, they could have done more to illustrate that point. But even that isn't revealed until later on in the series, which really draws into question why FIM's pilot is supposed to be the quote-unquote superior opener. With G5's locations, every set piece is a civilized society all on its own with its own laws, governments, and leaders, which certainly puts it above FIM's more bare-bones style of world building for much of its run, where you make up your own mind on how stuff works. Anyway, past me, back to you. Thank you.
But I think one of the gravest sins this movie makes with the story is that it feels like the characters don't earn their victory. This is especially egregious in the third act. My point is, these don't feel like great, inspiring feats. It feels like the characters' achievements and success were by luck rather than ability or strength of character. And that's not acceptable storytelling.
Alright, this critique makes absolutely no sense. What do you mean that Sunny and her friends didn't earn their victory? If that wasn't bad enough, he also says that they only accomplished stuff out of luck rather than strength of character. Oh, really? Oh, so the whole scene where Zip uses her budding detective rebel instincts to plan out the storm heist and steal Haven's crown means absolutely nothing to you. That didn't show how clever she is, or how her knowledge of the ins and outs of the palace was the only way they were able to snatch Pegasus Crystal to begin with. That didn't show strength of character to you. Or the scene where Izzy uses her crafting skills and creative talents to disguise her friends was also just dumb luck. It didn't show how Izzy's a capable pony who knows what to do in sneaky situations, which is something she constantly says throughout the movie. That didn't show strength of character to you either. Or the scene where Pip teaches Sunny how to dance using her extensive knowledge of music and dance, which ties back to her established personality and character traits. That scene didn't show how she was the only one that could help Sunny master the dancing game, and gives her a key role to play despite her not getting as much development as the others. That's not an inspiring feat of friendship to you. Or Sunny's entire arc throughout the movie, which is heartfelt and relatable. None of that shows strength of character, apparently. All that is just big dumb luck and absolutely nothing else. Absolutely none of these scenes show our characters helping one another or using their unique abilities or personality traits to accomplish their goals. Not one! You see, kids, the main five didn't earn their victory over each obstacle they face. They only succeeded because the plot demanded them to, because that's apparently how this works now. Let's just conveniently disregard the numerous scenes where our characters did help one another due to strength of character and say that didn't happen. Yeah? Sweet. I think FI may have inwardly conditioned us to believe that an act of friendship in Equestria can only be valid if it directly leads to magical Deus Ex Machina solution, due to the numerous seasonal arcs. I'm sorry, I know I might be getting a little mad at this one nitpick, but this is just a gross misreading of what happened in the movie. To say that none of what the characters did were great and inspiring feats of friendship is absolutely untrue, and I question how he could have even come to that conclusion in the first place, considering he literally watched the movie. He saw all these scenes happen on screen, yet somehow he came to the conclusion that none of these important character building scenes matter or were significant in any way. How this makes any logical sense, I have no idea, but remember everyone, this movie is teaching a political race message, and the series will be about getting vaccinated rather than teaching friendship. No, I'm not making this up, he actually says this in the message segment. But back to this criticism. If you're saying that Sunny and her friends should not have earned their victory, then by that logic, Twilight and her friends should not have earned theirs either. Because both pilots were ultimately resolved by equestrian magic in some capacity. Only in a New Generation's case, it works better because Sunny is actually given time to figure out the solution by herself by finding the Earth Pony crystal in the lighthouse, therefore giving her more agency as a protagonist, and giving the obligatory sad friends breaking up montage reason to exist. Also, while Zip and Hitch did fail to break the tires off of Sproticus Maximus, at least they were useful in the third act and actually did something. Which is certainly more than I can say for the remaining main six in the FIM 2-parter, who basically had one brief moment looking for Twilight, and then they disappeared until the climax called upon them again. Here, the main five all have something to do, and their mission is quite clear. Save the crystals, put them back together. I certainly prefer that to our other five main characters being useless in the FIM pilot, and Twilight is the only one who does anything of value when it comes to actually defeating Nightmare Moon. You may say that the scene with their virtues accomplished that, and I say, no it didn't. Those moments served the elements of harmony plotline, but none of the characters in the pilot ever laid a hoof on Nightmare Moon, or even tried to. As I said, Twilight is the only pony who does anything of substance when it comes to actually trying to get the elements to work. So, should FIM just be called the Twilight Show then?
Well, they failed to do the same here because Sunny discovers the Earth Pony crystal by accident. She discovers it because the sun randomly hit it at a right angle.
Alright, this critique is just stupid. Why is Sunny finding the Earth Pony crystal by accident such a bad thing to begin with? No pony could have told her what it was since the crystals had basically lost all their magical status by the time the movie's events began to unfold. She couldn't have known, and if you think she should have known, then I question how that even makes sense. The only way for her to not find this magical item by accident was if she already knew what it was. In which case, why didn't she spring for it before? And two, that would be making Sunny a Mary Sue since she already knew what the crystal was when no pony else did. Remember, the crystals at this point have been separated and have lost their true value. Queen Haven uses hers as a piece of jewelry for her crown, Alphido uses his as a tool for gambling, and the Earth Pony crystal uses a decorated piece for the lantern. No pony knows what these crystals actually are, and to that extent, neither did Sunny. The only way for her to find it realistically was by accident because prior to this, she had no knowledge of there even being a third crystal. Let's also compare the two emotional realization moments in both pilots and why New Generations works so much better. Twilight's emotional low point, if you can even call it that to begin with, is when the elements of harmony are shattered. And let's see just how long this moment lasts.
You little fool, thinking you could defeat me! Now you will never see your princess or your son. The night will last forever!
Are you kidding me? That short? Twilight didn't even have time to process the elements being destroyed before her friend swooped in and saved the day. I get the runtime restriction, but to that I say, write the scene differently if you're not gonna do it right. Twilight barely has any time to process what just happened, and as a result, she's not allowed to feel a sense of true failure. And before you say a children's main character isn't allowed to do that, A new generation calls BS. In comparison, Sunny's emotional low point lasts a good while, and these two scenes punch you in the gut, because you've been given time to care for her and her motives. You want her to succeed and you're invested in her journey. You've come all this way with her as an audience member, so the moment she and Izzy fail to put the crystals together, it really makes you feel awful for Sunny. Because unlike the element shattering, the crystals failing to work is a deeply personal loss. The failure goes way beyond MacGuffin not working. The failure of the crystals symbolizing the destruction of everything Sunny ever believed in. She's worked so hard to make her dad proud to fulfill his dying wish, and to see it all crumble before her very eyes is downright heartbreaking and tragic. I mean, you see her give the crystals back to each pony leader before apologizing to her friends and saying goodbye. Hitch trying to talk to her in the very next scene, but all she gives him is a look of pure disappointment. You see her walk sadly to her house, reflect on her windsill, put her action figures away, give another sad look, and only then does the realization hit. And it's not even instantaneous either. It's a slow build-up. You see Sunny slowly piece two and two together, and the sun shining through is the ultimate realization. The music swells, and Sunny stares at the crystal before plugging it into the table. That is masterful visual storytelling right there, and it's done with very few words too. It's a classic case of showing, not telling. I don't understand how you can be so disappointed with how the third crystal was revealed, Josh, because there was no other way to do it without making Sunny look like a Mary Sue, which is ironic considering you still try and call her that later on. It's not just about how the crystal was revealed. It can be done in a number of ways depending on the writer. The most important thing from a storytelling perspective is how the moment serves Sunny's character. And I don't know, seeing her go from having lost all hope to joyful in the very next frame is pretty satisfying. And what does Twilight get in comparison? 2 looks of horror, a gloating villain that disrupts any emotion we might have gotten in that scene, and an instantaneous reveal filled with the most generic magical girl power-up resolution ever. The scene is definitely epic, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't serve Twilight's character just be handed everything on a silver platter like that. If the pilot could have shown Twilight panic, try desperately in vain to fix the elements multiple times before giving up all hope, see her be close to tears that she failed Princess Celestia, and then have her friends show up in that epic reveal, then things could have been drastically different. As is, it comes off as cheap because again, Twilight isn't allowed to feel true failure. Heck, in this regard, the ending of the end puts the pilot to shame. So yeah, we have a clear winner here. A new generation completely blows the pilot out of the water.
It happens so often that when Sunny becomes an alicorn, he doesn't feel triumphant. It elicits a reaction of, why not? Who cares? Why try to achieve anything? Let's just hand out alicorndom like lollipops.
You know Sunny's alicorn form is a temporary power-up, right? It's not permanent like Twilight's.
That said, I do have problems. One of the biggest being that Sunny hardly learned anything or grew as a person by the end of this journey. Even the big realization at the end.
I understand now. It's not the crystals that need to be brought together. It's us.
That's literally what you've been saying the whole movie! Why are you treating it like it's a big revelation?
Well, here's a twist for you. What if I told you that Sunny's methods were actually portrayed as wrong throughout the whole movie? That was part of her overall character growth. At the beginning, she was trying to bring ponies together, yes, but she was doing it completely the wrong way. She focused more on what the ponies were rather than who they were, which is actually something you criticize, but that needs to be there as part of her arc. She was never going to reach the ponies the way she was because she never got on their level and approached them as a friend. She thought she was doing that, but the way she worded her speech and counter logic reflected her vast inexperience in this field. She could maybe reach a few kids, as kids are impressionable, but not everyone present. It was only after that scene at the abandoned station in the stained glass window did her 2 goals of restoring magic and bringing ponies together became intertwined, and that was when she started believing that only through the crystals coming together again would the ponies come together again, which, shocker, didn't happen. She thought that simply bringing the crystals together would bring the ponies together by virtue of that action, but it was naive of her to assume as such. But that's part of her character flaws in the movie. She thought of the crystals as a sort of incentive for unity when there really is no such thing. Friendship and unity are built on personal motivations and desires to connect, not a survival mechanism or ulterior motives. This gradually leads to her realization at the end. After going through all that trouble of taking 2 of the crystals, she and Izzy put them together, and it doesn't work, because of course it wouldn't. The hard lesson that Sunny had to learn was that it wasn't the crystals that needed to be brought together in order to reunify the pony tribes, it was the ponies coming together themselves. They had spent so long hating each other that it didn't matter whether the crystals were put together or not, as the tribes would still hate one another. Sunny learned that the hard way, and she almost gives up because of it. She's understandably crushed because she feels that everything she worked up for that point was for nothing. She was reckless, breaking the counter logic, thought of short-term solutions that backfired in her face, thinking the crystals were the be-all end-all solution to the ponies cooperating, and participated in a heist without thinking of the ramifications. Nearly got the Pegasi unicorns fighting again due to her actions, among other things. She's a flawed individual who actually goes through character growth and evolution. In the end, the pony tribes are brought together not just from the crystals, but from them choosing to work together, which was the lesson Sunny had to learn.
And compared to Twilight's growth, Twilight wanted nothing to do with friendship at the start. She had to be shown. She had to change. The introduction was about learning about the magic of friendship and that she needed to learn it. The whole entire show was about how our main characters, all of them, were flawed and needed to grow.
Sunny's a better protagonist than Twilight, I'm just saying. I'm more invested in a protagonist that starts from ground zero and goes on a personal journey to prove that all ponies are meant to be friends, where her motivations are deeply rooted in an emotional core. Example given, the loss of her father and a desire to fulfill his dream, that anchors her arc and makes her feel relatable. Sunny is a character that we can all see ourselves in, and that's why her journey in New Generation works. The fact that she's poor and works a minimum wage job that no one respects grounds her in reality. The fact that everyone laughs at her and treats her like a social outcast who must be avoided at all costs makes us feel for her. The fact that for all her soapboxing and activism, she's really a lonely individual who wants nothing more than to prove her father right. She went out and did this every day, enduring all the bullying and harassment, all to make him proud, to make other ponies see the truth. The fact that she becomes an alicorn is a non-factor, not only because it's not even permanent like Twilight's transformation, it's more so a temporary power-up that only occurs when she's truly helping some pony, but that trying to use that to discredit Sunny's character development, and to say she's rewarded for lying and stealing, which she isn't by the way, is just plain stupid and the most surface-level interpretation of her character art I've ever seen. We don't really get to know Twilight all that much in a pilot episode, and that is a big problem. We barely get to sympathize with her outside of her being the main character because the story is moving at a breakneck pace, and at least in Part 1's case, is more focused on goofy shenanigans than actual character building. So much, in fact, to the point where you don't even know how these characters even know each other, nor do you feel a genuine bond between them, until the story outright tells you that Twilight learned something about the Every Forest Trek. I'll get to that more when we get to Zade's video, but if you notice, Josh seems to be consistently making the point of how FIM's pilot did more in 45 minutes than the New Generation did in an hour 30. But that isn't the case at all. Whereas the FIM pilot succeeded in only establishing the world and main six on a morally foundational level to the most blatant kids fare, a New Generation, in contrast, actually engages you and speaks to you like an adult most of the time. If we take Sunny's character arc alone, for example, she's an incredibly tragic protagonist with relatable motivations that you actually identify with. And let's not even get into the fact that one of the only reasons why Twilight's journey even started in the first place was because the Summer Sun celebration was happening in then just that one day, and the fact that Twilight was antisocial. And I can already see the fanboy rage emerging from within all of you in the comments, so I'm just gonna ask you and stop and think before you start angrily tapping away. What exactly does Twilight want throughout FIM? What is her central motive? Why does she do everything she does? Besides the obvious learning friendship desire, what personal stakes does she have in any of this? What drives her as a character to learn friendship and accomplish all these great feats? What makes Twilight a complex protagonist beyond the basics? She has an arc about leadership in Season 4, and she takes on her own personal suit in Season 6.
Objection!
None of these are actual overarching personal goals, so try again. What makes Twilight an interesting protagonist?
So you guys have nothing to show me? Do you have anything to say other than,
You don't have the answer, do you? Now that's not to say that Twilight isn't an overall better protagonist, because she is, mainly due to the amount of experiences she went through throughout FIM's run and the lessons she learned. Calling Twilight superior overall isn't a false statement, alright? It isn't, don't get it twisted. However, whenever I see someone call Twilight better than Sunny, they usually explain it through retroactive points, meaning that they're applying what the later seasons did onto this pilot in order to explain why Twilight is a superior protagonist by default, by proxy. Yet there's a flaw with that mindset. As I established earlier, Twilight didn't start off as relatable. On top of being a privileged rich kid who is the personal student to a country's ruler, which is very unrealistic, what if we were to take those 9 seasons of development away and compare it to pilots alone? Because what a good pilot needs to do is give you reason to be invested in the main character, see why they're doing what they're doing, and all the better if that motivation is built around an emotional core. Because remember, we're going to be following that main character throughout the show's runtime, so you gotta identify with them on some level. You don't have to know everything about the main character, but enough like family background, personal motivations, etc. This is all character foundation, and something that you must do in order to make your lead character look good to your potential audience. So since we're only comparing the pilots to these 2 generations here alone, how are these 2 protagonists on a character foundational level? Well, it's no surprise that for all the reasons I just described, Sunny beats out Twilight by a massive landslide. On top of having the far relatable journey and emotional character arc, Sunny also stands out as a more fleshed out character than Twilight ever was. I'm gonna ask you another question I think might be easier to answer. What does Sunny want throughout G5? What is her central motive? You probably answer that by saying she wants to bring ponies together in friendship and make the world a better place. And to that I say you are absolutely correct! But that's just a simple motivation, of course. We obviously need the why when it comes to a great protagonist. So why does she do what she does throughout this generation? Write what you think the answer is down in your note cards, and I'll come back in 10 seconds. Alright, I'm back. Now, if you answer that the reasons why she does all this is because she wants to make her father proud of her and fulfill his wishes, you'd be half right, because the actual answer is a bit more complex than that. We've already established that she holds her father's teachings in very high regard, and that's how she went out and did her activism. But there's a bit more emotion to that goal. Really, the whole reason why she's doing any of this at all is because the desire to see Equestria unified was all Argyle ever wanted, and it was his last wish that he never got to see. He died in a broken world that never took him nor his research seriously, and Sunny feels like it is her mission to make that dream a reality, no matter what the cost is. It doesn't matter whether she's unprepared to carry on his legacy. She's going to do it regardless if it gets her killed or not. She'll go to the ends of the earth and drive herself to the very limit if it means fulfilling this goal and proving his point. She wants to bring the pony tribe together out of her personal desire to see her father vindicated and his greatest dream realized. She internalized everything she was taught and stepped out in a world that was unprepared for any of this. As I stated before, we clearly get to see that she doesn't know how to do any of this right, and that's part of her defining character flaws that must be overcome throughout her journey. Her motivations for learning and growing as a character all come down to a grieving daughter's desire to fulfill the only thing her father ever really wanted, the last teachings that instructed her to carry on into adulthood. Even after this movie, Entire Tale and Make Your Mark, you clearly still see her on this mission, because the work isn't over and it'll never truly be over. It doesn't just stop once the ponies are reunited. Even in spite of getting her a little less focus, you can still tell what she wants and why she wants to improve the lives of her fellow ponies. She becomes a leader and pillar of the community by doing even the smallest things. Her position as a smoothie maker is representative of her giving back to the community, so her job is directly linked to who she is as a pony and what her overarching goals are. She isn't just a generic activist character in the rest of G5, like the mainstream fandom so desperately wants you to believe. No, she's a complex and interesting character throughout this whole generation, and has valid personal goals for wanting what she wants. She wants to understand the new magic she's been given, and use it to improve the lives of the ponies around her. She carries on the memories of her father wherever she goes, and she applies the lessons she learns onto her friends, who in turn develop themselves and are inspired by her. Which is certainly more than I can say for dear Twiggy here, or any of her friends for a good amount of episodes. We never get to see a genuine bond between Twilight and her friends in a pilot two-parter, as all the moments between them existed purely to move the plot along and to set up the element scene. As a result, the remaining main six felt nothing more like convenient plot devices. Case in point, I called bull in how they managed to find Twilight in the library immediately after that moon returned. It was only in later episodes afterwards that we get to see genuine lessons being taught and actual bonding between them. And I already know someone is going to say, oh, Hawk, they laughed together after Pinky's song. Yeah, and? You call that meaningful character work? It's a 5-second moment. A 5-second moment! And again, it's only to serve the Elements plotline. Twilight doesn't actually have the time to bond with their friends outside of that 5-second moment. The entire time they're together, their screen time is confined for the quest to the Elements, and the runtime is so tight that whatever dialogue is spoken serves only to serve the plot in the most blatantly obvious way. But plot cannot exist without character. With the new generation, we actually spend a little bit of time with the characters individually in order to know them outside of the main quest. Yes, the plot is still moving, but at least we get to know these characters. Say what you want, okay, about the stakes of a new generation. At least it allowed crucial character work between our protagonists to exist. If only we had a pilot to a generation, where we see our main characters actually have a moment together to bond and open up to one another about why they decided to go on this journey to begin with. Where we find out how much our core characters value each other's company, and why our main protagonist decided to go on this journey to bring ponies together to begin with. Oh wait, we do! That point goes towards G5, and not towards G4. Right out of the gate, I'm already more invested in Sunny and her journey in G5 than I was with Twilight and her friends in Season 1 of FIM. Sunny doesn't have all her problems solved easy for her in this movie, and in Make Your Mark, oftentimes it takes more than one episode to resolve a conflict, which I really like. Unlike Twilight, who at first rejects friendship, Sunny wants to spread it to all the ponies around her, which is certainly more preferable in my opinion to lol, make friends, introversion bad, and it's certainly less patronizing to people who actually have a hard time making friends and who are asocial. As someone who has asocial tendencies myself and has a strong work ethic, the way the pilot simply said, lol, you need to make friends and stop studying so hard just rubbed me completely the wrong way. Sure, it's part of Twilight's arc, but the way the pilot went about that message just seems so juvenile. They started making better strides in later seasons only to regress back to their old ways of amending fences and made it even more patronizing with Moondancer. You might think I'm reaching too far, and you know what? Yeah, I'll give you that, as what I just said is definitely more of a personal experience thing. Twilight's arc is good on a fundamental level. She was a workaholic who needed to learn to let friends and other people into her life. But it's just way too simple, and as a result, Twilight is too simple. In comparison, for her entire life, Sunny was mocked, ridiculed, bullied, and made to feel worthless simply because she believes in a cause that meant so much to her and her dad. She had to earn the trust of the three pony races, and actually went through tragedy, hardship, and suffering before finally getting what she wanted. She was a poor smoothie maker stuck in a town that hated her and wanted her gone, so when she finally achieves her father's dream, it's really cathartic. Sunny barely had anyone for most of her life, and absolutely no one to turn to for help. She couldn't rely on authority, as even her childhood best friend Hitch disproved what she was doing, and doubted the validity of her beliefs. Heck, he was even going to unfriend her if she kept this up. That meant she would have had absolutely no one left to be there for her, and she barely had anyone in the first place. As a protagonist, Sunny already has a rich backstory and isn't just a blank slate when the movie starts. This is one of the many places where a new generation succeeds over the FIM pilot, because the writers here were not just focused on establishing the status quo and our main character as the protagonist. On top of doing that, it also told a story of its own that is largely standalone. If you take Make Your Mark and Tie Your Toe out of the equation, the story stands on its own 4 hoofs and doesn't need them. You could honestly tell someone that this is where the story ends, and I'm quite sure they would believe it. None of the characters would actually suffer or feel underdeveloped. Okay, maybe Pip would, but still. Sunny is driven out of her personal desire to see her father's greatest dream come true, and she accomplishes that in an incredibly tight runtime. There's no sequel setup, okay, one sequel setup, but the story succeeds in its own right and it feels complete.
It's not bad that kids should emulate Sunny Star Scout's character, right? She's not a bad person, right? Well, I do find it a little concerning that she constantly hand-waves all the damage she does, because as long as we accomplish our goal, that's all that matters, and it's never addressed.
Never in the movie is Sunny outright careless about the damage she causes, nor does she attempt to hand-wave any responsibility. Heck, when she and Izzy failed to put the crystals together, she feels like all the damage she ended up causing was for nothing, and she feels terrible for almost driving the tribes to war again by stealing their crystals. She's genuinely apologetic and takes full responsibility for her actions, as evidenced when she says this line when returning each piece.
I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused you.
In fact, that's not the only thing she takes responsibility for. She also apologizes for what she thought she did, which is letting her friends down. She believes in this moment that she just might have led her friends on a quest built on lies, as her faith in her father's teachings is severely shaken. She believes that everything she worked up for up until that point was all for nothing, and that...
But everywhere I go, I just make things worse.
I find it kind of weird how you don't take that crucial part into consideration when making that statement, as Sunny never hand-wave any responsibility away. Is she hyper-focused on her mission? Yes. Maybe a little too hyper-focused. But the moment she thinks she messed up big time, she takes accountability for it immediately. And that's part of what I love about her. She's earnest, sure, but she has a clear sense of right and wrong. It's at this point where everything catches up to her, and she realizes that everything she might have done was for nothing, and she feels horrible for potentially leading her friends on, and as she puts it,
I'm so sorry I let you all down.
So, did you just not pay attention to that part, or is there some form of internal disconnect going on? I think he may be referring to when Sunny promises her friends that things will go back to normal after their quest is done, in order to quell their arguing, but even that isn't hand-waving anything. It's just her trying to keep the group together. Hello everybody, future me again. So to support what I scripted a year ago in regards to Sunny not actually hand-waving any damage she causes like Josh is claiming here, I'd like to show you all a clip from another YouTuber's review that I think actually adds on to what I was trying to get at. And you're all gonna hate me for this, but my evidence comes from Mr. Left Turn's own video on New Generation. I know everyone wanted me to include it as a hate video to debunk when I first announced this project, but I honestly didn't see anything so bad about it that warranted a full-on rip to shreds RNC. Give or take a couple nitpicks here and there, he actually seemed largely positive on the film, and some of his analysis actually helped me appreciate the film a whole lot more. So, with that out of the way, this is what Lefty had to say in regards to how he saw this little short scene in the film.
Secondly, I also like how Sunny specifically mentions to Hitch that she'll be in custody even after their mission succeeds. She doesn't say anything about how their success might change his mind. Sunny fully understands that she's crossed some lines by maritime base standards, and that Hitch is only doing his job by trying to bring her in to face the consequences. The fact that she plans to do so, even if she proves him wrong about magic, really shines a light on how honest of a pony she is.
Anyway, that should be all I have to say in post-production. Carry on, me. Alright then. I take issue with this statement because it's blatantly misrepresenting what actually happened in the movie, when we know what he's referring to didn't actually take place. If you're a reviewer, and you're reviewing a movie to someone who potentially hasn't seen it yet, you have to be lunar darn sure that what you're saying actually happened, because this will go on to inform their opinions, and you also need to make sure that they're walking away with the facts.
Kinda pathetic, really. I guess that's the point if you look at it from a certain point of view, but it doesn't make the character or the story more interesting.
The reason why Sprout works as an antagonist is because he's a reflection of the status quo. He doesn't need to have a tragic backstory or have an Anakin Skywalker level fall to darkness to be compelling. We are meant to see him as a joke villain because thematically, his underlying prejudices are a reflection of maritime base as a whole. We're not supposed to root for him or the current state of affairs in the slightest. Sprout is a direct mirror to the town, so when he starts going on a killing spree with Sprouticus Maximus, that is the moment the tribes realize that, oh wait, our hatred for ponies different than us almost led us to an all-out war. This realization is hammered home when Sunny's lighthouse is destroyed, and every pony sees first hoof the destruction they themselves helped cause. Sprout is a joke villain, sure, but that's perfectly fine. He doesn't need to be complex or grounded because he is not someone you want to root for. We need to constantly see him be the lazy and whiny coward who is the butt end of last, because that sort of character doesn't deserve any sort of dignity. He's a rebel rouser, tries to weaponize a town full of innocent civilians, tries to start Pony War 1. The writers made him like this intentionally because he is meant to be unsympathetic by design. You literally can't add humanity to him because then that would make him relatable in a way, and that is a bad thing. In this day and age, relating to a wannabe Stalin isn't something you want to be teaching your kids. It's good to have sympathetic villains sometimes in your stories, but not all the time. George Lucas and Dave Filoni went out of their ways to make Anakin Skywalker sympathetic by design in the Star Wars prequels and 2008 Clone Wars show respectively, because we are meant to root for him and feel for him. His fall to the dark side was tragic and heartbreaking. Sprout isn't a tragic character. He's a borderline sociopath who takes advantage of those around him, and that is what he is meant to be. He literally can't be sympathetic. We saw how well that worked in the last 2 seasons of FIM now, didn't we? Where all pre-established minor threats have to be redeemed because why not? Who cares if it goes against previous seasons of continuity? Everyone gets redeemed! Yay! Sprout doesn't need to be a complex antagonist because of the fact he's the type of villain you want to root against. He's the type of villain you want to see immediately get defeated, which is good for audiences. The reason why you love to hate him is because he's a lazy rebel-rouser who has no moral qualms about keeping an entire town in a constant state of fear in order to keep himself in power, therefore exposing the fundamental flaws of the status quo and providing without a shadow of a doubt that things need to change, not just Maritime Bay, but all of Equestria as well. Sprout is meant to be the archetype of what happens when you let fear get to you, when you let it drive you and consume your life. He is meant to be a reflection of what Ponykind has become, and its rapidly escalating influence on the town is contrasted greatly with how Sunny grows as a character throughout her journey. He already acts as a foil to Sunny's ideals, which makes him essentially her direct opposite. These two characters are mirrored in a way, which Sprout is a defender of the status quo, whereas Sunny represents the change that needs to happen. He is by all intents and purposes a hateable villain, which is a valid trope in writing. You want to see him get his comeuppance, and his lack of humanity in him is not only intentional, but crucial to the story getting told. What Josh seems to not understand is that if you treat Sprout like a tragedy rather than a comedy like he's being portrayed here, the whole thematic idea being presented gets ruined. It's very powerful if you think about it from real-world terms. How we tend to let aspiring dictators take power because we're so scared of something, and they exploit it in order to gain our trust. That is what Sprout is, and the story wouldn't work without him being portrayed this way.
It's like Pip helped Sunny win the dance-off? Yes, he could have done that. What does Pip actually bring to the table?
No, Izzy could not have done that. What does she know about singing or dancing? Is she a pop star singer like Pip is? No, she isn't. Just like the Virtue scene in the FIM pilot, every main character here has a moment where they contribute something to the overall story, which ties back significantly to who they are as characters. For Zip, it was formulating the heist to steal Haven's crown. For Hitch, it's when he finally lets his guard down and joins the group. For Izzy, it was disguising her friends during the fit right in sequence. And rapping for some reason. For Sunny, it was her final speech to the town when the lighthouse was destroyed, which acts as the culmination of her whole arc throughout the film. And this is Pip's moment, which helped Sunny win the dance-off with Alphabeetle. No other character could have done that, as Pip's love for singing and dancing is what directly contributes to the story. She may have not gotten as much development as the others, which is a real shame considering the vast potential that the Make Mark series is able to mine out of her, but the writer still found a way to give her an important role to play in the narrative, which I have to commend a lot. It's not easy. Izzy could not have filled in for Pip here, as singing and dancing is not her expertise. It isn't what her strong skills are. That's being creative, being able to craft something out of nothing. Pip likes to dance, which fits the situation here as it's the perfect opportunity for her to show off what her abilities are, which in turn helps Sunny get the unicorn crystal. I hate seeing critiques like, oh, Pip was useless throughout the whole movie, she didn't do anything, wah! Yes, she did. Aside from her saving Alphabeetle in the final act, like I mentioned earlier, her big defining moment where she directly helps her friends is this. So don't act like she didn't do anything important or somebody else could have filled in for her. This was Pip's scenario to shine. This was her strength of character moment. Only she would have known how to help Sunny here, which in turn cements her place among the main cast. But of course you wouldn't see that, would you? After all, you claimed earlier that the main five did nothing significant throughout the whole movie, so I shouldn't be surprised that you said this.
On the other hand, when has he ever shown competency or leadership? The other ponies thought he was a joke and he constantly took advantage of them. I understand they're scared, but I find this very hard to believe.
Believe me, buddy, it makes perfect sense that the ponies of Maritime Bay would trust Sprout here because he's telling them everything they want to hear. When people are this scared of the unknown, they'll trust the first person who gives them a solution, no matter how ridiculous it might be. It's like a herd mentality. You trust the person who acts as a guiding force because you don't have any other choice. How do you think Hitler did it? He became a leader purely through a cult of personality and exploiting fear, which is exactly what Sprout is doing here.
Plus, the lyrics are patronizing.
You mean like every MLP song in existence? Dude, this doesn't even count as a critique of the movie itself because this franchise has never been subtle with its lyrics. Being geared at kids is designed to convey the most obvious messages. Don't believe me? See for yourself.
Be unique, just be the same. Thought this school would be more fun. Can't wait for our classes to be done.
Tell Virgo my place 20 minutes. I've got something that will magically erase all my debt. 'Cause I'm the friend you need.
It all so clearly. The best way to survive is all alone.
'Cause this dragon just can't wait to live here.
Yeah, my point exactly. You might be asking how these examples prove anything, and you'd be right to ask that. I just want to point out the hypocrisies in Josh's criticism here. Why G4 gets a pass for doing this and G5 doesn't is a blatant example of double standard for the community.
So when this movie quite frankly bludgeons us with the message that racism is bad, it feels counterproductive. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad message. I agree, racism is bad. But for me, someone whose line of work requires him to spend a lot of time on social media, so I'm seeing all this performative activism being shoved in my face 24/7.
The real message of the movie isn't racism is bad. That has got to be the most surface level interpretation I've ever seen in my life. No, the real message is, don't close yourself off from those who seem different than you, because chances are, they are more similar to you than you might initially think. This is a more universal theme that FIM has frequently played with a lot during its 10-year run in a lot of episodes. And that message can apply to any situation, not just with race. It can apply with those with different physical attributes, socioeconomic status, a lot of stuff. Like G4 before it, the pony racism is more so a metaphor, or should I say allegory in this case, to convey the message. It is not meant to be the crux of the moral. It is more so used as a means to convey that moral. It's something that's easy to miss, but this movie was never trying to make a real statement on the race issue in itself. It just included it because that's the easiest way to convey that message to kids. We don't really get a lot of diversity when it comes to physical attributes or what have you with these ponies, so showing racism between the tribes is by far the easiest method to get that moral across. I honestly have no idea how you can take a basic friendship message that Affleck has taught us so many times during his 10-year run and interpret it as a political race message. That just doesn't compute to me. How is this movie trying to make a statement on race? It's the most basic friendship lesson that we're very familiar with at this point. This is what happens when you're looking for something to criticize. When you have no other way to justify your criticism for a movie that doesn't deserve it. So you're like, you know what? I'm gonna outrage bait to my audience and tell them that Mount Pony's going woke. I guess I shouldn't expect more since Josh Scorcher does tend to take things too literally from time to time, but come on man, you're way better than this. What about this movie is political to you? How is this movie teaching politics to you in any way? It's a My Little Pony movie. A My Little Pony movie! Its core message is friendship being the most powerful thing in the universe. Not racism is bad. What sort of planet are you living on? And this review gets worse. Oh boy, does it get worse. If you thought that despite everything, this video wasn't so bad, it's just his opinion at the end of the day. So what if he doesn't like the movie? It's his opinion and he's ultimately entitled to it. That's all it is, right? Right?
You aren't a bigot, are you?
Oh boy, we're in for a rough landing. Buckle your seatbelts and hold on to your cutie marks, every pony. This roller coaster isn't a smooth ride anymore. It goes full on Puffball's Death roller coaster from Teapot 3 from here on out. And this time, Death Pact again wasn't there to build a soft landing cushion for us to land on. Let's just continue this before I start regretting my life choices.
I'm here for stories and to be inspired, not to get preached at.
Imagine coming away with the notion that a piece of LP media is preaching politics to you. That's actually pretty pathetic the more I think about it. You don't have any actual analysis on the story, and the best thing you can say is preaching a political race message. How? How did the Brony fandom get here? How? How?
Seriously, who is the audience for this? The only thing I can think of is that this is only for the kids, and, well, yeah, I can accept that.
And then he would proceed to not accept that.
That said, both of these are movies that can still be enjoyed by kids that are as young as 3 all the way up to adults, and things don't feel mismatched. So I'm a little frustrated that the standard seems to be doubled.
Being a huge Luna fan, I do appreciate the joke, thanks Josh. That actually did make me laugh. But your reasoning for there being a double standard doesn't make sense when it comes to people enjoying this movie. What about this is double standard to you? Because I don't see anything like that here. The themes presented in this movie, like overcoming adversity, inspiring others, and taking a stand, are those that can be enjoyed by both kids and adults. In fact, adults would get a lot more out of this than kids would, especially when it comes to Sunny and Hitch's plotlines. These arcs are presented in a way that mature audiences will be able to appreciate a lot more than kids. With Hitch being more morally ambiguous in terms of his stance on the other pony races, like Josh points out, the one thing I actually agree with him on here, and Sunny reconciling the grief of losing her father with the fact that his loss is what ultimately drives her to go on this quest, there's a lot more to appreciate thematically that only adults would get. And in this instance, this is G5 living up to the promise of being more for older audiences like it was initially pitched as during early development. The only double standard I see here is trying to equate this movie to a political hit piece, and then wanting when most people don't see it that way. And I'm not usually one to appeal to popular opinion due to the very nature of what I'm trying to do, but I have to call it here just this once. People enjoyed this movie for a reason, and that's because it resonated with all audiences, not just kids like you're claiming. And trust me, we will get back to this.
To an extent, as there are a few things about this movie that kinda kneecap that argument. For one, a similar movie, Zootopia, is rated PG.
A similar movie? Mate, A New Generation has nothing common with Zootopia. Not on a story nor character level.
You guys might be wondering then why he's making this comparison, and allow me to explain. And no, I'm not making this up. The only reason why he thinks that these movies are even remotely comparable is because of his belief that a new generation is teaching a political race message. And as we established before, that idea is not only false on a conceptual level, it is blatantly not what the movie is trying to say. The movie is trying to teach a basic lesson on embracing friendship and differences through the lens of showing racial tension between the three pony tribes, which is something that FIM has played with a lot during its run. So why is it preaching political nonsense now, yet it wasn't then, huh? A message doesn't suddenly become political over time when it wasn't before. That's just nonsense. Could it be that this is a new generation and sprouting anti-G5 rhetoric gets more clicks and views? Nah, that can't possibly be it.
Imagine the kind of story we could have gotten if the rest of the movie was treated with the same amount of finesse that was given to Hitch.
Alright, I just want to get one thing out of the way first. As I stated before, I agree with Josh's assessment on Hitch. He just might be one of, if not the most complex character in the movie, next to Sunny due to how nuanced his feelings are towards the other tribes. He doesn't see things in black and white like the townsfolk, therefore allowing him to view the status quo objectively. But at the same time, he still grew up in a climate of prejudice, and without having met the other pony tribes besides his own, he can't see what Sunny sees in them, and that's what puts him at odds. And to see his hesitation slowly get broken down over the course of the story, as he spends more time with the other ponies, is by far an example of brilliant writing for someone like him. It feels natural, and you get to see that once his badge is lost, his authority is as well. Without that unhealthy power dynamic keeping him one step ahead of Sunny, he's forced to be vulnerable and see the world the way she sees it. He slowly sees before his very eyes the proof that you've been alluding to this whole time. And it all comes to a head once he sees the connection between Sunny and Izzy's Phillyhoods, and how it unites the whole group. That's what leads him to finally let his guard down and offer to do his part, which really was the climax of his entire character journey. Hitch is awesome, I agree. That being said, to pretend like the rest of the movie doesn't have that is very disingenuous. On top of Sunny being a very complex protagonist for all the reasons I just described, all the other characters have something going on with them as well, and you get to see them struggle to deal with it. From Izzy being naturally curious and wanting to explore the world around her, Zip struggles with escaping a stuffy palace life that she doesn't want and desiring to be free, to Pip worrying about the implications that her being exposed to the concert could have on both her life and the rest of Zephyr Heights. There's a ton of things to analyze. Hitch isn't the only pony with depth to him, and it's plainly obvious as well. You clearly haven't been paying attention to anything except his character, yet you still want to claim that the rest of the story has no depth. Maybe it's for the best to give up on G5 this early because we've clearly lost the old Jaw Scourger.
In several key areas, the movie seems to be a little hypocritical. After Izzy and Sunny flee to the lighthouse, they get themselves into a situation where it's natural and perfectly suitable within the story for these characters to try and get to know each other. However, they don't talk about interests or likes or anything. They talk about racial stuff. A concerning level of focus about racial stuff. I understand the reason, countering misinformation and understanding others who are different is important, but it's a wee bit uncomfortable that these characters seem to see each other less as people and more as race representatives.
What about Sunny's interactions with Izzy here comes off as flawed to you? I'd react the same way if I was meeting someone who might as well be an alien from outer space. Speaking of aliens, I feel I need to illustrate an example to really prove my point here. Let's say that you are living your life. Then all of a sudden an alien appears out of nowhere in the town. We're going to use Neytiri from Avatar in this case because I absolutely love that franchise. So you're living your everyday miserable life, then suddenly Neytiri shows up, this big tall blue alien with a bow from a distant world. You take her home because your town is trying to capture her and you two finally have a moment. Is your first question going to be about who she is and what she likes? Of course not! You're going to meticulously study her and ask her questions about her race so you can determine whether or not you need to immediately call the police or the CIA. Especially if you grew up in a climate where anyone that doesn't look like you is constantly talked about in a negative light on a day-to-day basis and treated like the boogeyman. Sunny grew up in a climate full of stereotypes, so she's not infallible to talking like one of her peers when she meets a unicorn who could possibly read her mind and shoot lasers out of her horn. You're acting like this is a major flaw with Sunny, that she focuses more on what Izzy is than who she is, but how would she know any better? That's my question for you. How is she supposed to know any better? Because she's the main character? That excuse doesn't fly. This isn't a problem with the movie's portrayal of Sunny. I say this is a pretty instinctive and natural reaction. It appears that Josh is so wrapped up in his Sunny has no flaws whatsoever narrative that he completely misses the parts where her character flaws are shown. The fact that she sees Izzy at first as just a strange unicorn, and then later comes to view her as a close friend, is practically the entire point of the movie. Jeez, I really should not be pointing out these simple things to you.
Now, if this is actually addressed in the story, I'd be okay with it. That would have been an incredible thing to talk about.
It was.
But nope, Sunny's already perfect. She's right about everything, and she's always been right about everything.
No, she wasn't. How are you even... Wait, he's about to do that. Oh, no. Houston, we have a problem. Mission abort. Do not proceed. Please do not go there.
I hate you.
The only things she's wrong about are small, innocuous things that she won't get called out on too harshly by anyone.
Are you high? What is this?
I'm not going to go as far as to call her a Mary Sue because she isn't one. But dang, does this movie make it tempting.
You should not even be tempted to call her a Mary Sue. She is a flawed character with a clear arc from beginning to end of the movie. Apparently the only person who didn't see that was you.
Her friends teach her how to better lie and steal. And she is rewarded for this by becoming an alicorn.
Okay, now we're trying to trivialize Sunny's journey throughout the movie, are we? Alright, hold on. I need to take a deep breath because this is taking a lot out of me. Alright. This is blatantly not what her character arc is, and you know it, Josh. Sunny was not rewarded for lying and stealing. In fact, her reckless actions throughout the film directly come back to bite her in the rear end when the crystals failed to work. As I stated before, the fact that she's prone to doing all these things is part of her character flaws in the film, which apparently you don't see. She has to totally get to see her friends less as what they are, and more as who they are. And that's when she's rewarded with a horn and wings. Sunny became an alicorn because she earned it. Bringing the ponies together after they'd been separated for generations was a huge feat, and it was a personal victory. She helped create a better world, and inspired ponies to be their best selves in the process. She brought friendship and harmony back to a world that needed it, and restored magic, the very thing ponies needed to survive. She had a strong drive to succeed, and she never wavered on it, even though so many were telling her to give up. She did this because she believed the ponies around her had the potential to be better. She went through all this trouble for them, and endured true hardship in order to prove herself. In doing what she did, she embodied everything that friendship was, and she was rewarded as such. She became an alicorn because of everything she did pointed to her deserving it. She stepped up and led when no pony else would, and she lost the only remaining memory of her father, that being the lighthouse she grew up in, all to prove her very point. That night, she proved herself through showing the qualities of a true leader. You want to know another reason why Sunny's final speech is so significant outside of what I already just explained? It's because of Sunny's belief in others around her, inspired of being better individuals. They saw a pony who believed in her cause so strongly that she's willing to go to the ends of the earth to prove it. And she reaches out to them as individuals and appeals to their better nature. Compare these two moments of Sunny's soapboxing and tell me that they represent a character that hasn't matured and evolved throughout her journey. She could never convince them before because she never appealed to their hearts and showed them proof. But what those ponies saw in the wake of Sprout's invasion was a true leader. Some pony would give their all for those by her side, and in that moment, the three leaders finally realized that Sunny was a better pony than all of them combined. That she, even at a young age, had the maturity and empathy that none of them did, and that if she could make friends, then so could they. She won the hearts of the pony leaders through leading by example, which is what a true leader is. She overcame adversity and emerged as a stronger pony for it, while inspiring others to follow her example and become better ponies in the process. That's why she became an alicorn.
Am I the problem? Seeing as how so many people watched this movie and loved it, I almost feel like I'm missing something fundamental. Like, the problem is with me and not the movie.
It is you and not the movie. Thank you for realizing that. You've misunderstood basically everything about what it was trying to say, with the exception of Hitch's character, to the point that it's not even funny. Like, having to watch you fumble the ball on everything and try your best to make the movie come off as a political hit piece was painful to watch. I know you're better than this. There is no political race agenda behind this film, and it's obvious. People love this movie because it connected with them on a personal level, and it told a great story with wonderful and relatable characters.
To see an appalling lack of empathy and compassion from a number of fans who see any criticism of the way this movie's message is handled, electing to write these detractors off as racist.
Alright, back the heck up. Writing critics off as racists? When did anyone say that? Please give me a source, because I have been around to witness a lot of early G5 discussions, as you guys have seen, and I haven't seen any of this happening. I sincerely hope he isn't lying about this just to illustrate his point, because lying about something like this is just awful. Obviously, if this did happen, please do not harass people and call them racist and sexist for not agreeing with you. They have their own lives too, and it's important to remember that. But I can safely say that no one's been doing any of this to my knowledge, and I don't really like where this is leading.
You're still allowed to think in black and white when it comes to defending the movie's message. Complex opinions? We don't need those. Don't question the herd. You aren't a bigot, are you?
What? Alright, that's it. I take it all back. Did he just accuse us G5 fans of calling other people bigots? You gotta be kidding me, I can't believe... Okay, that's it. You've crossed the line. How is a new generation of political hit piece to you, you mind-blowing muppet?
I'm not excited about the show that's coming after this. I'm afraid the show's episodes are just gonna be more of this.
You mean more layered feel-good stories about how friendship is worth fighting for, with fully developed characters like the movie? Sign me up.
Heck, I'm half expecting the first episode to be about getting vaccinated, and Sprout and Phyllis are going to be anti-vaxxers and...
Vaccinated? Are you serious? Ugh. This review just turned into a parody of itself. We're done here. So, that was Josh Scorcher's review on A New Generation. And all I gotta say after watching it is... thank Luna he gave up on G5 this early, because oh my hoofness, getting through this review was insufferable. Gone is the great analysis and comedic timing that made his FIM reviews so entertaining, and in his place are blatant lies and misunderstandings in regards to everything the film was trying to convey. And to top it all off, he tries to say that the movie was teaching a blatant political race message to kids. Why? Why? If you made it this far into the video, you might have noticed that something links this video back to the early videos by Clownfish TV, that being the political fear-mongering. Whereas their videos were a malicious attempt to destroy this generation from the very beginning, before A New Generation even came out, Josh's video served to fan the flames, and spread a narrative that G5 is teaching partisan politics further. I have no doubt that a lot of Josh's vid is his own opinion, but some of the things he says also strike me as just trying to spread a hate narrative. There is no way that he could have come to some of the conclusions he did without some sort of ulterior motive, unless he was just that clueless, which I don't really believe considering his track record. This is especially egregious at the end of his review, where he goes full mask off and tries to make you feel bad for not seeing things the way he does. This was designed to turn fans off from the upcoming show and make it an outright failure for Hasbro. And you might be wondering why this knowledge is important. Well, it's been because the backlash against this generation mainly comes down to one thing and one thing only. False narratives that constantly change depending on what else these hacks cook up. I decided to shed light on the situation mainly because the popular opinion seems to have shifted into something else entirely following Making Mark Chapter 6's release. As you can see, we went from A New Generation is a woke political hit piece on racism to A New Generation was the only good thing about G5 and it all went downhill from there. You guys may have noticed the wasted potential argument that's been popping up more frequently, and I for one find this very hilarious, because it's abundantly clear now that at one point, these same people were insisting that G5 had no potential, or that it was a cheap cash grab that destroyed G4's potential. Sure, there are many that loved the movie and were excited for Making Mark, but if you compare it to the amount of people who were wanting this generation to die a horrible death because it dared to continue G4's story, then that ratio really is 10 to 1. G5 has no wasted potential. You guys knew exactly what story you were getting into when you watched the movie, and suddenly now you're complaining about it because it's popular. You can't have it both ways. The show didn't ruin anything from the movie, and that's something I'll be proving with the following videos in this series. I'm tired of seeing unfounded hate for this generation spread around from video to video like a virus, and I'm taking a stand against it in order to show people how much they've been lied to. But for what I want this video to be, I want it to be an indictment against how all this G5 hate originated. I wanted to shed light on how all this came to be, and how the Brony fandom was gunning for its downfall from the very start. They never wanted G5 to succeed. The moment it was announced this generation would be a sequel to FIM, they closed their minds to it and dedicated themselves to hating it no matter what it did. It doesn't matter how good G5 has gotten nowadays, or how both shows have improved from their initial conception. They will continue to hate it because it is good for views. They will continue to lie about G5 because it gets their audiences riled up and they can preach how G4 was the absolute masterpiece with no flaws whatsoever. At the time of recording this, BeatFox15 is set to release his own hit video on Chapter 6 tomorrow, and by the time my video comes up, his video will probably be already out as well. But you know what? I'm not going to watch it. Not even out of curiosity, and you shouldn't either. The only way we're going to see any actual change around here is if we boycott these hate videos, and let people know that the hate train has run past its prime. The G5 hate is a scam. Everything about it is fake. It all started because some imbeciles decided it'd be a good idea to cry woke, and then other channels decided that they themselves could profit off of it. What we need to be doing instead is supporting true bronies who love G5, and spreading videos like mine and others around so that other people can see just how good this generation is and watch it for themselves. Instead of supporting pretentious hacks who can't form coherent arguments to save their lives, we need to support channels like mine, Phelan Cortez, Doc Anubis, so on and so forth. These people represent what this fandom once was, and what it could be again, and we are the people you should be listening to. Whereas the hate them will tell you that G5 is a cheap cash grab with nothing to say, we're telling that it is an absolutely beautiful story with wonderful characters that is a worthy successor to FIM's legacy, and even surpasses it in several areas. I was never expecting to love A New Generation. As you saw, the whole concept of Gen 5 as seen by the movie synopsis got me so angry that it seemed so fundamentally broken. And besides, I was skeptical as to whether this movie would serve as a worthy successor to FIM. I didn't think this movie would be any good. I was always going to support it if nothing else but because of my love for MLP and despite those toxic purists who cried woke, but I didn't have high hopes for it. Yet when I actually sat down to watch it, I was blown away with what I got. We received a shockingly mature story that had so much depth and hidden layers behind it. Sunny Star Scout absolutely outshines Twilight Sparkle right off the bat with her first impression. Her friends all have their distinct personalities and all have something to do. The story is grounded and relatable, and the film just has so much heart behind it. In spite of the corporate hand they were dealt with by Hasbro, basically mandating that you must force this generation to be in the same world as J4 no matter what, the creative team absolutely bounced back and delivered a story that managed to stand on its own, and therefore, is worthy of the MLP brand. It treated its audience like adults. It was not afraid to tackle very sensitive subject matters. It was mature and thematically poetic, and it set the stage beautifully for the rest of G5. Even though I absolutely adore making Mark and Toya Tale, even I have to admit that they could not beat the absolute emotional powerhouse that was a New Generation. And that's why it's the best piece of MLP media for me. It broke away from the traditions that other movies in this franchise would normally follow, and it took risks. It dared to be its own thing, even though all the odds were stacked against it. And that, in my opinion, is an accomplishment that deserves so much more respect. So, what's next for me now that I can finally say I've fulfilled my biggest obligation and kickstarted my defense video series? Well, it might sound like I'm done with a New Generation after that big speech of a conclusion, but trust me, I'm not. If you remember from the prelude, we still have Zebagenta's videos to debunk. Yes, I am aware that he deleted his channel already, but I already downloaded a copy of his review to my photos and reacted to it. I just gotta splice the footage together. And if you're watching this today, no, deleting your channel will not stop the ghost of disgruntled fans past, that being me, from coming in and teaching you a lesson. So, I'm pulling a Rebel Moon and releasing this video in 2 due to popular demand. Once again, I used the power of YouTube community post to determine whether you all wanted this video out now or later, and the answer was, well, overwhelmingly, now! I must have starved you guys a lot waiting for this video. Well, you asked and I delivered. I gave up the opportunity to write my second planned Christmas story during the holiday season, so I can get this video out to you guys, so I hope you all enjoy. Hashtag rest in peace, second G5 Christmas story. A year and a half worth of production, holy cow. Don't worry though, now that I've released the first video, you won't have to wait another year to see the second part. Y'all can rest easy knowing that installments will be coming out a bit more regularly now. Since we've already debunked the G5 is woke argument, what other big talking point would be the next video's topic you may be asking? Well, the second biggest issue these people seem to have is the supposed lack of originality and G5 pulling a Star Wars sequel trilogy. And I'm gonna rip those arguments a new one. As always, let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you agree or completely disagree with me. I'm already aware that since this is a video exposing the whole fandom, there's bound to be strong reactions, and all I can say to that is, please try and keep things civil in the comments. I'd be quite interested in seeing what you all have to say. Let me know whether I made you appreciate a New Generation a whole lot more, brought up some things you previously didn't know about to light, or whether you're excited for future videos in this series. I know I certainly am. And if you're a G5 hater who subscribed to any of these notions, I hope that I was able to teach you something. That's all I want at the end of the day. With that being said, this is Hawk Nightwing signing out until next time. Hoof to heart.